Welcome everyone. This is Kellyanne with Church Windows. I am your presenter for today's webinar. Today we're going to look at label design. A few things before we get started. Let me close out our presentation here and let me bring up our website. The material for today I'm using right from one of our workbooks. It's Membership 103. If you own the workbook already, I'm starting on page 14 with selections for labels. If you're interested in purchasing the materials or the workbooks, on our website, if you look under Beginning and go to Training Workbooks, you'll see a page, gives you some details about the workbooks. They're $12 for us to send you a downloadable link that you would print. Or if you want us to print them and bind them and mail them to you, they're $22 each. There's different packages you can look at, and below each different module we list all of the different workbooks with an overview of the topics. If you look here, we are using material again from Membership 103. The printing labels area, pages 14 through 24 is what I'm going to cover today. You don't need the workbooks, but if you're interested in the material, we want to make sure you know where those are. On the Gotowebinar Toolbar, if it's your first time using Gotowebinar, on the toolbar, bring this up. On the toolbar, there's a little orange arrow to the side of the toolbar. If it's blocking what I'm showing on screen, if you click that little orange arrow, it will minimize the toolbar. And then if you need to open the toolbar back up, you just click that little arrow again to open it up. Also, I won't be unmuting people to ask questions because we have a question panel, and you can type your questions within that panel. And while I'm showing the material, Josh is in the room and he will answer your questions individually as I'm showing material. And then at the end of the webinar, open up the floor for questions that I'll just read out loud and answer for everyone. Just out of respect for everyone coming today to learn about label design, let's try to keep the questions topical. If you have a question about your specific labels or your data, sometimes those questions are best answered talking with you or emailing and talking about your specific data. Or if you have a question about a different module, we'll be happy to answer that, but might be best to call in or email us with that question. Let's go ahead and take a look at labels. I went ahead and opened the program just to have it be a little quicker. To open and get into labels, I went to membership, so I just clicked on membership on the opening screen. When you first open labels, well, to get to labels, we go to reports and labels. We're not going to talk a lot about this first screen. We'll do a little bit of criteria after I show you label design. What the material today really is going to cover is clicking next. And when you first open the label area and go to step 2 for the first time, here you see the second field, label layout. If I click the down arrow here, it's empty. There's nothing in there when you first buy the program or when you first go into membership label area. You have to design the label based on your type labels that you're using, and there's quite a variety of labels available. Now, looking on the screen here, first you can choose the date of your mailing, label layout. Below here it tells us one label per individual, giving unit, and family. And this is how you determine how many labels you're going to get for a household. Do you want a label for every single person in a household? Or do you want it based on how they give? If you're not interested in donation criteria, then you're mostly going to be going with individual or family. Giving unit will look at whether they give as a family or not, and that's how it determines what name to put on the label, whether it's going to be the family name or the mailing label field for people who give as a family versus individual names for people who give by themselves. Family doesn't look at giving. You're just going to get one label per family, unless there's an individual alternate address, in which case it would print a label for that as well. But right here, one label per, that determines how many. Your label layout, which is what we're going to look at in a little more detail, that determines what name goes on the label, whether it's Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith or Joe Smith. If I chose a label layout that is the family name or pulling from the mailing label field. Let me show you this real quick. When I say mailing label, and when we do design in just a moment, what it means by mailing label is not the entire address. It means this field in the upper left, mailing label. It's going to pull that name. So when we create a label with the mailing label, it's going to pull the mailing label name versus over on the right side, first name and last name for an individual. And that is determined, let me get my clicking tool back here. That is determined by the actual, I thought I got my clicking tool. I still have the spotlight. Here we go, clicking tool. All right, that is determined, what name goes on there is determined by the actual layout you choose. So let's go back to labels. I like moving that to the middle. We'll hit next. And notice, I'm going to go ahead and let's dive in bottom of 14 and let's create a new label. This will probably make more sense when I actually show you. The first thing that comes up when you create your first label is the report wizard, where you can choose the product type you're using and then the product number. If you look at the list here, there's quite a variety of manufacturers. Most common is this Avery Standard, and the most common product number used with that Avery Standard is the 5160, which is the 3 columns of 10 in each column. But notice when I choose Avery, you have a slew of different labels you could choose. But again, 5160 is that 30 per page that seems to be the most commonly used. But if that's not the one you use, there are so many different manufacturers and product numbers available. If you need to, usually you just click finish here, but if you hit next, the second screen for the label report wizard is where you can adjust some of the sizing and where it fits on the page. I've never had anybody need to go into here. So typically these do fit and you don't even need to mess with these, but if you do find you need to change some of those dimensions, you can do that on step 2. I'm going to go ahead and click finish and whoops, turn to page. That was all. That got us through page 15 if you're following along in the book. Top of page 16 shows what we have on screen right now, the report designer. And this is what you'll see if you create a brand new label. It's going to automatically default. If you look in the upper left, you'll see under detail where it says mailing label and address. What that means is it's going to pull the mailing label name, or what I showed you on the houses in the upper left, which is usually Mr. and Mrs. or the Jones family. That's the name it's going to pull, and it will pull the address as well. So we're going to go ahead and click Save As on this one. And it's going to automatically name it the manufacturer and the number. So you can change that if you'd like. I probably would call this my 5160 mailing label name. So I know if I choose this one, it's going to give me the mailing label name. I'm going to say OK. Now to close out of here, I can click the X in the upper right. And now notice I have one label layout created. Now I want to show you if I choose family and I click print. Let's make this a little bigger. Maximize it. Notice, let's see here. We're just getting one label per family. And if we see more than one, then it's probably here we have Abigail Ellison and Mr. and Mrs. Bryan and Penelope. These are, I'm guessing, maybe children that have an individual alternate address. But notice for most of these people, we're getting one label. And looks like for a lot of our single people, we just have here at the bottom right, we just have Jake Knox, Jenna Hunter in this third column. But a lot of these are Mr. and Mrs. So it's pulling what it sees in the upper left or the mailing label field for those people. Now let me go ahead and show you if I were to choose this label, mailing label name, and I ask for one per individual, meaning I want one for every single person in the house. It's going to look like I maybe have duplicates because I'm seeing, if you look at this first column, Mrs. Jen Arnold, Mrs. Jen Arnold. Karen Bartholomew only have one, but here we have 2 for the Bell family. We have 4 for the Bernard family. So what's happening there is it is addressing it to the family because that's the label layout I chose, but I've asked for one for every person in the household. Now probably if you want a label for every person in the house, you probably want it to put their individual name on here. And this isn't in the material, but I think it's important, so I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick. I can take an existing label. I'm just going to click Edit Label here, and I'm going to edit my mailing label and address. I'm going to right-click on Mailing Label and Address in the upper left and choose Delete. And then from the list along the right, I have all these different things I can add. What will put the individual names and addresses is names and address. So I'm going to click on that and drag and drop it right where I removed mailing label and address. I'm going to click Save As, and I'm going to name this one 5160 Individual Names. So with these layouts, if you do some kind of search criteria at the very beginning, you can save that on step 1. That is totally different than the label layout you choose. You don't need to create a new layout every time you do a different search. The layout you create isn't saving a search criteria from, maybe looking for people who have emails or females over 18. What you're saving when you save a label layout is you're telling the program, when I choose this label, this is the name or this is the information I want you to pull and put on the labels for whoever I search for in the first step. So all I'm saving here is telling the program what information to put on the label. So let's say OK here and close this. And now if we look, we have 2 different label formats. If I choose individual names and do 1 label per individual and hit print, notice now instead of putting Mr. and Mrs. or the actual mailing label name, it's putting their individual names. And I'm only getting 1 for every person in the house with their actual specific individual names. Now, if you want a label, 1 per family, with all of the actual individual names on that label, I could choose this label layout of individual names, choose 1 label per family, hit print, and notice now it's putting the actual first names on each of these labels of everybody in the family who met any criteria I might have searched for at the beginning. All right, now let me go back to the material. We are on page 17. I don't keep my head in the material, so we already looked at selecting the label to be used. To select it, we just click the down arrow here. You can choose, if we look below 1 label per, you'll see start position. Maybe you have a sheet of labels where you've used some of those already. You can choose a different start position other than number 1. Maybe I want to start 2nd column. So notice I chose to start on label 11, and this is going down the first column and starting up at the top on 11 because I said starting position 11. Go ahead and turn to page 18. Postage Saver, that's a program. If you need bulk mailing, you can look at the partner programs on our website, and there's more about Postage Saver there for bulk mailing. If we jump down to Select, this is where you can look for a particular name if you're trying to see if maybe a name is on here and you're not seeing it. Look for Amanda Frey, and there it found that name for me. If there's someone here you decide you don't want to print a label for, you can just uncheck this print column, and then it will not print a label for that person. Or if you accidentally uncheck some and change your mind, you can, along the bottom, click Check Print for All, or you can uncheck and just check the ones you need. Also on this screen, upper left, is the Organization Info tab, where if you'd like, you could print return address labels. And there's a sample as well. Now, if you need to change a label design, we can see that down at the bottom of 18. I guess I got a little ahead and showed you how to do that with the individual label. If we go back to options, excuse me. Let's just go ahead. We can pick an existing label, or you can create a brand new one. I like choosing an existing one that has the elements I need, and then I edit that as I need later. I'm going to choose this individual name label, and we're going to add an additional field. Maybe we want to put the phone number on this label as well. We can do that by choosing our label and clicking Edit. Now I want to put an additional field just above where it says names and addresses. So I'm going to drag down on my label that I see in the upper left in detail because I want to make room for my additional field. And then if I look at my list of fields along the right, I see just about the middle of those data controls, additional field. I'm going to click and drag and drop that right over names and addresses. And now I'm going to click Save As, and I'm just going to add individual names with additional field. And say OK. All right. And now if we look, we see our new label layout of individual names with additional field. And notice we have something new on the screen. It recognizes that this label requires an additional field, and now there's a box there where I can click the down arrow here, and maybe we want their cell. Let's choose their home phone. We want their home phone number on that label as well. So I choose what additional field I would like, and then I can click Print. And notice on my labels for people that do have a home phone, that home phone number is printing just above their name and address. All right, let me go ahead and turn to page 20. So that's just a few examples of how to make labels. If you look at page 20, if you're following along in the book, we do have some samples of searches and labels that you might create. So let's start fresh. First, it shows how to produce labels for all families in the member and or visitor files. To do that, we'd go to Reports, and then Labels. I'm so used to going into Reports Directory Export. Let me drag this up. All right, so here on the first screen, on the People tab, we can filter out who we want. Here we want everyone. We want to include visitors. So along the right, we can see members and visitors is checked. We don't want terminated people, so we're not going to check that. We do not want membership groups, individuals from donations or donation groups, so we're not going to check any of that. On the Giving and Pledging and the Accounts tab, we're not interested in donation information, so we're not going to change that at all. And those, the Giving and Pledging tab and the Accounts tab, we do cover those in the Donations workbooks or the Membership 204 workbook. We're going to jump over to the Sort tab. I'm on page 21. We're going to go ahead and sort this by zip code order. But if you look here, you can sort by just about any field on the records. And then we can choose whether we want to sort it ascending or descending. We're going to go ahead and click Next. And now on the Print Labels screen, here we want to choose the label layout we need. And we're going to choose, we will go ahead and do our mailing label name. And we want one per family. And then to bring these up, we're just going to click Print. And this brings up our labels. We see we have some folks with incomplete addresses that we probably want to investigate. Up at the top of the screen, we have the information where we can click I. This is kind of like on reports where you have the summary at the end. On labels, you don't have that, but you can click the I at the top of the window to get a count and see exactly what you were searching for. So we have 75 members and visitors in our test data or households. We didn't look at any giving or pledging. We looked at everyone. We looked at all accounts, and we included both members and visitors. So there's an easy way to get labels for all of the members and visitors in your database. The next item on page 22 is labels for a group or class. That we can do a little differently. We can go to Reports, but then we can go right to Groups, Classes, and choose Labels. We could do this through Reports Directory Export, but if we go through the Groups, Classes selection, it saves a step. It automatically populates Groups, Classes in the upper left as search criteria, and then it also brings up that group class selection where we can choose the groups and classes we need. We're going to go ahead and send something to our choir, so we're going to choose all of our choirs and click OK. Because we entered search criteria, we see it in the upper left, and now we want to click plus selection to add that. Excuse me. And we're not going to do anything with giving or pledging or accounts. On our sort tab, we could choose name, zip, whatever we want. We're going to go ahead and go with name. And we'll click next. Here we want to do mailing label and address, or mailing label name, because there might be more than one person in the house, so we're not going to send multiple letters of the same thing to every person in the house. We'll just send one to the entire household. So we'll choose one per family. Take a look at your list, make sure it's what you need, and then click print. And that brings up a preview of our labels. We can click the eye and see here there's 32 people. And the criteria here was our groups classes was adult choir, high school choir, or youth choir. So we have labels for anyone who is in any of those different choirs. So pretty easy. All right, and that gets me to the end of the written material that I wanted to show you. I did notice a question. Someone asked, I thought the labels printed left to right. It does on mine. My 11th position would be rows 3 down, second position. Why is mine different? I haven't had that question for a while, but I know it's in Report Designer. So you can change whether your labels print across the page or whether they go down that first column and then over to the next one and down that column. And again, it's been a while since anybody's asked, but I think that is in Edit Label. Let's see if my memory is going every day. And let's see, was it over in detail? Here we go. So that was Robin Thomas. Robin, right here, if you click on the word detail when you're in Report Designer, or anyone else who wants to change how their labels print, if I click on the word detail, then click this little arrow. Here we have a multi-column layout, down then across. So my labels are going down the first column, then over the next one. If you would prefer they go across then down, then I can change it right here in the label design. And then I'd want to make sure I save my change. Again, if you missed that, I clicked on the word detail, click the little arrow, and right here, multi-column layout was what I selected. I did notice it's past time for this webinar, so if you don't have any questions, then you can go ahead and exit. It won't offend me at all. Let me show you real quick. Now that I saved that, if I choose label position 11, oops, I forgot to choose. We'll do one per family. Click print. Instead of starting at the top of that column, notice now it's starting just like yours. Starting because it's going across rather than down that first column. So you can change that in the report design area. All right, are there questions? Okay, I showed where you go for workbooks. Maybe you missed that at the beginning of class. Someone asked, where do I go? If you go to our website, www.churchwindows.com, hover over beginning and then click on training workbooks. And here you'll see all the different topics, some different packages. You can click on downloadable or pre-printed. Right up at the top, it gives you details about the cost, $12 if you want to download your own and print it, or $22 if you want us to print and send those to you. So those workbooks are available for purchase on our Church Windows website under beginning. And you're welcome, Robin. All right. Are there any other questions? Now, if you're in the middle of typing a question, you might want to hit enter and then keep typing the rest so I don't close the room while you're typing. Okay, someone said their problem encounter is that the label begins at the top of the labels, but then by the bottom it gets low. Then you probably need to adjust your margins and your label size in the Report Designer. And that's really a matter of you going in and tweaking that and playing around with it. That's not something I can really help you with on a call. I would give us a call and ask someone to help you with your labels and membership, because that's not something I'm going to be able to fix for you on this webinar. Need somebody on the phone with you, or I mean, you really, it's just adjusting. You keep having to tweak it until it fits right. But if you want to give us a call and talk with a tech, it'd probably be easier to help you on the phone. One printer prints fine. Printers spool things differently. So one printer could be spooling the page up further than the other printer is, so that's not uncommon for one printer to spool the paper different than another. So again, this question really you need to give us a call, and a tech can help you on the phone, talk you through maybe making some adjustments that then get those labels to fit right. Because every once in a while we do get a call where labels don't fit right, the printer just doesn't spool like most printers. So give us a call and we can help you with that. Someone said, where do you go to get past membership webinars? Again, you go to beginning, free online webinars. Oops, I'm sorry, let me go back. Probably the easier than going to beginning is if you're on our home page, right at the very first page. Click over here on supporting church windows, and right there in the middle, documents and videos. If you click on that, and then here you'll see all of our different modules, the different videos. You can also use the search in the upper left. If I click in there and type first thing that came to mind, in kind, takes me right to topics, documents, and videos that cover in-kind gifts. So all the webinars and videos after they're cleaned up and standardized are on the website, and you can look under supporting, or you can use the search in the upper right to search for those items. All right, let's see. Someone said, I missed the very first of the webinar. Label designer is where? Well, the label designer, one second here. We go back into membership. You access the label designer. On step 2, you would select your label layout and click Edit Label. And that brings up the report design area. If you missed part of this webinar, I am recording it, and I believe usually Thursdays Robert cleans these up and standardizes them and puts them up on our website. If you look at our website, I know I've done label webinars. I think we're just trying to put newer ones up, just so you have the newest and all the screens match. But there are quite a variety of free webinars and maybe even documents as well on labels. The one here on how to build a label with the giver number. Here's another how to build. Advanced label creation on this very first one. So if you missed today's webinar and you can't wait till Thursday or when this webinar is cleaned up and put on our website, there already are several webinars right up on our website. Now it does say version 17 and 19 is the most current, but 17, the labels are very similar between version 17 and 19. You might see some of the tabs move from step 1 to step 2. I believe version 16, it was all on one screen instead of 2 steps. But the design of them really hasn't changed much. I think the controls used to be, because it's a third-party software they use for that report design control, used to be over on the left side of the screen, and then it in one version switched to be over on the right side. But how that functions, it works the same. Now if you have a really old version of Church Windows, then you didn't have a label designer. You didn't have as much flexibility with labels. All right, I think I got everybody's question. Josh may have had to jump out. Oh, we have workouts here, so he had to go real quick so he could go to the workout. But are there any questions? If you have questions, go ahead and hit enter and then type the rest so I don't close this before you get all your question in there. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I am going to go ahead and end this webinar for today. If you have more questions, then definitely give us a call and take a look at all the other webinars available. I think we have them up through August right now, so take a look. Thanks for joining us. Hope you learned something new. Bye.